that's it for now. I'll be back with the latest in half an hour. Until then, there's plenty more on our website. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Dan Walker and Steph McGovern.
It's 7 o'clock, these are our headlines for you this morning. A city in lockdown, a gunman on the run after at least 3 people are killed and a dozen injured at a Christmas market in Strasbourg.
Mounting pressure on Theresa May as the likelihood of a vote of no confidence in her leadership by Conservative MPs grows.
3 profit warnings and counting, but could things be looking up for Dixon's Carphone? Their results are out shortly. I'll be talking to the man in charge. Drama in the Champions League as Liverpool and Tottenham make it through to the last 16. This was the moment Alisson saved his side at Anfield. If Napoli had scored, Liverpool were out. A late draw in Barcelona was enough for Spurs and felt like a win.
And we take you behind the scenes of the BBC's adaptation of Les Mis. Lots of drama, but no singing. And that's a bit of a disappointment to some.
Well, no, I always think I can sing, but no one else seems to.
Hello, this morning we've got a cold start to the day in the east, but there'll be some sunshine for you. For most of us it's cloudy with some drizzle, but it will brighten up through the day. However, there's snow in the forecast for the weekend. I'll have more in 15 minutes.
It's Wednesday the 12th of December. Let's bring you our top story this morning. Just gone 7 o'clock and a manhunt is underway in Strasbourg this morning after a gunman opened fire at a Christmas market, killing at least 3 people and injuring 12.
The authorities have begun a terrorism investigation in the French city after an earlier police search uncovered a number of weapons at the suspect's home, including grenades. Eliza Philippidis has this report.
The city was on lockdown. These are the scenes just moments after the shooting. Confusion, panic. The 29-year-old gunman opened fire using an automatic weapon. Some people tried to help those who were shot.
And I saw a person with apparently 2 shots into the head lying on the bridge here. We tried to engage in resuscitation activities. We took him into a restaurant and we tried for 45 minutes to resuscitate him. There are no ambulance services apparently able to enter the area. And after 45 minutes we stopped the resuscitation efforts because the doctor told us over the phone that it's senseless.
As soon as it was safe, ambulance crews were sent in to collect the injured and take them to hospital. President Emmanuel Macron has been briefed in Paris. The French Interior Minister put plans into action.
Le gouvernement vient de décider de passer en urgence attentat.
The government decided to switch to a state of emergency, with the set reinforced controls at border crossings and also at all of the Christmas markets around France, to avoid similar events taking place.
Police said the suspected gunman was on their watch list. Questions will now be raised about how to best protect the French people from attacks like these. Eliza Philippidis, BBC News.
Well, let's get the very latest now from our Europe correspondent Damien Grammaticus, who is in the city. So, Damien, they're still on the hunt for the gunman. What more do we know?
They are, yes. So, well, what I can tell you is that those lockdown measures, the confinement measures here in the old city centre, where everyone who was out last night at that Christmas market in bars and restaurants were told to stay indoors, those have now been lifted. So people have left those restaurants and bars. The city is waking up again and starting to get back to normal, but in a state of alert. Authorities have told everyone to be vigilant. There are several hundred police on the streets searching for this man. We know a little bit more about the sequence of events. He launched his attack about 8 p.m. and in the next 40 minutes or so there were twice exchanges of gunfire between him and police. It's thought he may have been injured in the left arm because he jumped in a taxi, escaped, and since then police have now been searching for him, and that manhunt does still go on.
Damien Geraticus, thank you very much. We'll of course keep you up to date as we get more developments on that story.
Yeah, that's one we're going to keep an eye on for you today. And also our next story, because Theresa May is fighting to save her Brexit deal and potentially her job as well. This is because of renewed claims that Conservative MPs are now close to forcing a vote of no confidence in her leadership. Yes,
Brexiteer Conservatives say they are confident that they've reached the threshold of 48 letters needed to trigger a vote, but there has been no official confirmation. So what could happen now?
Let's take you through it. In order for a leadership challenge to be launched, at least 15% of Conservative MPs need to submit a letter saying they no longer support the Prime Minister.
If the 1922 committee chairman, Sir Graham Brady, receives enough letters, a vote of confidence in Theresa May via a secret ballot will be held.
If that happens and she won that, her job is safe for another year. If she loses, the party will then have to pick a new leader, and Theresa May couldn't be one of those potential candidates. Well, our political correspondent Ian Watson is in Downing Street for us this morning. I mean, Ian, I think it's really important, isn't it, to point out that if people are waking up this morning thinking, oh, I've not heard about this, actually it happened, you know, almost a month ago again, didn't it?
Nothing, actually. Absolutely right, Dan, but what happened then, of course, was an attempt to try and get the 48 letters of no confidence, which would start to trigger the process of a leadership election, and her internal opponents in the Conservative Party failed to do so. What's different this time? Well, obviously she's postponed that vote on her deal, but in addition to that, we're now getting other more senior figures coming out and saying they have no confidence in her too, including the former Cabinet Minister, Owen Paterson, who's denounced her for being a feeble supplicant in negotiations with Brussels, and saying, if in effect, he can't trust her word. That may in turn encourage other people, obviously, to put in their letters as well. And certainly inside Downing Street, as you can imagine, this news is not welcome. They're saying that if there were to be a leadership contest, and they don't know, there's no official confirmation, but if there were, that would undermine her efforts this week to try to renegotiate and get some of the assurances that their own MPs want on this deal from Brussels. In addition to that, they're also suggesting that if there were to be a new leader, they probably wouldn't be in place for 6 weeks until towards the end of January, increasing the risks of a no deal or indeed no Brexit at all. So that's effectively her message to people to try to dissuade them from getting behind this move to oust her.
And just in terms of what the Prime Minister is actually up to this week as well, Ian, yesterday we saw in The Hague and then in Berlin and in Brussels, and there's also rumours, aren't there, that potentially Graham Brady, the man who's apparently might have these letters, has booked in to see her this afternoon, when she's also meant to be going to Ireland today.
She is, yes. So she's facing Jeremy Corbyn at the Prime Minister's questions. She's then going off to see the Taoiseach, her counterpart, the Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, and I'm told also Arlene Foster, crucially as well, leader of the DUP, the party that's propping her up in government and who are not at all keen on her deal. Now, if she goes ahead with those meetings, of course, she's hoping to get some reassurance from them on this issue of the backstop, as it's called, the way of avoiding a hard border in Ireland, and then to have these discussions later this week at a European Council in Brussels as well. So the last thing she needs in the midst of all this is an attempt to remove her from office.
Thank you very much for that, Ian. And we'll be putting some of those questions to Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice, David Gauke, in just a few moments for you on Breakfast.
Yeah, let's bring you up to speed with the other stories this morning. The body of British backpacker Grace Mullane has been formally identified and returned to her family, who say that their whole world has been turned upside down. The 22-year-old went missing from a hostel in Auckland on December the 1st. Detectives in New Zealand say they are still piecing together exactly what happened to her and are building a timeline of events. A 26-year-old man was charged earlier this week with her murder and will appear in court again next month.
Debt charities are warning that some of the poorest families in the country will be left relying on food banks over Christmas because of universal credit.
From today, all new benefit claimants will be signed up to the scheme. Many people already on universal credit have complained about their payments being reduced and delayed. The government says there's no reason for people to be without money over Christmas because advanced benefit payments are available.
Scientists are saying the number of wild reindeer in the Arctic has more than halved over the last 20 years, and this is because of climate change. Their population has dropped from almost 5 million to just over 2 million. The change is being blamed on rising temperatures, which affects the plants they eat, and some herds have shrunk by more than 90%.
Now, we've got a bit of EastEnders news for you. If you're a fan, a lifelong fan, we have some important news, and you can't think EastEnders without thinking that, though, can you? The duff, duff, duff.
No, it didn't work for me last time. I'm going to try it again.
It doesn't.
You little rat bag.
Oh! And now it's broken.
Oops.
There we are. Daniel, you shouldn't be, you shouldn't have tantrums when you don't get your own way.
That was a fake TV tantrum.
Right. There is a reason why we're actually creating this madness, and that's because The Sun is reporting that two of the soap opera's classic characters are making a comeback. Lofty the barman and Mary the punk are reportedly set to return to Albert Square after 30 years. They're going to be involved in a storyline with another Walford legend, Dr. Harold Legg. Dr. Legg, Tom Watt and Linda Davidson were part of the BBC soap's original lineup when it launched in 1985.
I think the entire original cast have been back in it at some stage. I'm sure someone should work that out.
Yeah, and do you know Lofty, when he left the show, he went to work as a social worker and then as a television sports reporter.
Yeah, I think I interviewed.
Quite a career.
Yeah, when I first started off. There you go. Plenty of information for you this morning. So 11 minutes past 7. Let's return to one of our main stories for you today. We've been hearing that Theresa May could face an imminent no-confidence vote in her leadership. Yeah, senior Brexiteers MPs say they believe they now have enough support to trigger the challenge, but there has been no official confirmation as of yet. We're joined now by Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice David Gauke, who voted to remain in the European Union. Mr Gauke, really appreciate your time on the programme this morning. As you well understand, things are changing sort of minute by minute, hour by hour. Can I ask you, first of all, do you know, or what do you know about the potential of these 48 letters being submitted?
Well, I haven't spoken to Sir Graham Brady. Clearly there's a lot of speculation. I have to say it wouldn't surprise me if those letters have come in. It is disappointing, though, because the Prime Minister is doing exactly what she needs to do in going out, making the case. Yesterday she was in The Hague, she was in Berlin, she was in Brussels. Today she's due to go to Dublin. Tomorrow she's due in Brussels again. Listening to what the concerns of members of Parliament, trying to get the best deal, trying to ensure that we are in a position to leave the European Union, reflecting the referendum result with a deal this March. And that is what she should be focusing on and being able to do. And I think it is very disappointing if it turns out there is a confidence vote. How much trouble is she in? Do you think she can survive this? Yes, I do, because I think she is the right person to lead the country. What we need is someone as Prime Minister who's got the attention to detail, who's got the willingness to work, just put all the effort in to make sure that we get the right deal, and that's exactly what she does. I think the public recognise that she's worked tirelessly in recent months to deliver this deal. A lot of people said it wasn't possible to get a deal, and she has done that, but she's listening to the concerns of members of Parliament, trying to address those issues, address those concerns, and she needs to be able to get on and do that and not be undermined by what I think would be a self-indulgent process. I wonder if this week's events have actually changed a few opinions, though, because it's hard to ignore the difference that cancelling that vote may have made, not only to Brexiteers but also Remainers as well. And you have a leader here who said there would definitely not be a general election, and then she called one. You have a leader who said there would definitely be a vote and then cancelled the vote. And for those people who might be watching over the last few weeks and thinking, oh, here's a determined Prime Minister, those same people might now be thinking, actually, there's a credibility issue there, and maybe that's what's changed. Well, look, what's happened this week is a lot of my parliamentary colleagues have said we have got concerns with a particular aspect of the withdrawal agreement and the deal. We want to address those concerns. The Prime Minister has listened to those concerns, and rather than pressing on with a vote without those concerns having been addressed, she said, let's take some extra time, let's go out there. And as I say, she is working incredibly hard this week, as she has been for week after week after week, demonstrating the qualities we need in a Prime Minister. And the idea that we should remove her at this critical time in our country's history. You know, it is really vital what happens in the weeks ahead, that we remove a Prime Minister, so that essentially we go through a process until, what, late January, early February, where effectively we don't have a Prime Minister, would be an incredibly reckless thing to do. And you know, I really think that would be a big mistake for the Conservative Party to go down that route.
Can I ask you that? I mean, what do you genuinely think will happen? Do you think, best case scenario, that she's able to renegotiate in some way, particularly this area around the backstop, she brings that back to Parliament, and then you genuinely feel that she will be able to get that vote through? Because that, essentially, that is the best case scenario for her and for the Conservative Party, isn't it?
Well, I think it's the best case scenario for the country, more importantly. The reality is that the choices for the country are narrowing, if you like, and it is largely between leaving without a deal, which I think would be economically disastrous, not proceeding with Brexit at all, which I think would undermine our political trust and be bad for democracy, or alternatively delivering on this deal. And I think as the argument is made and as the choices become clearer, I think that process of the deal can succeed. But you know, she's not going to be able to succeed if, rather than going out there negotiating with her counterparts, she's having to deal with a confidence vote here. We'll see whether that happens or not, but I think that is unwelcome, and I think it would be seen by the public as being self-indulgent, especially if this we actually had a leadership election. I think at this point in our history, given the circumstances that we're in, the challenges that the government faces, I really don't think that is a responsible course of action.
You talked there about sort of public perception, and just finally on this issue, I mean, there's lots of people watching this morning, and I suppose wondering what's going on within the Conservative Party at the moment. Are you, and others in the same sort of position as you, are you looking at some of your other Conservative Party members and you know, seeing almost, you know, the sharks circling around the Prime Minister, and some people positioning themselves to potentially be the new leader, and almost looking personally rather than thinking of the bigger picture? Are those conversations going on within your party at the moment?
Well, I think you make an important point here, is that we have all got to be motivated by the national interest, doing what is best for the country.
So you do think that some aren't then?
Well, look, there are going to be honest differences of opinion on that, and I'm sure the vast majority of my colleagues are motivated by the national interest. That is what we all want to do. But I really do think that you know, if you want the qualities of motivated by the national interest, a willingness to work tirelessly to that end, a complete determination and courage, then Theresa May is the Prime Minister that we need. And I really do feel that attempts to remove her at the moment don't reflect well on the Conservative Party. We're supposed to be the grown-ups, and that's exactly how we should behave.
David Gauke, thank you very much for that this morning. We'll also be speaking to Ian Duncan-Smith in about an hour's time. And again, if you just switched on this morning, it's going to be one of those days for Prime Minister Theresa May, because there's all these rumours about potentially Sir Graham Brady having enough letters to force this no-confidence vote, and then if Theresa May were to lose that, there'd be a leadership election and she wouldn't be able to take part in that. And that's what David Gauke was talking about this morning, while Theresa May is meant to be having Prime Minister's questions today, going to Ireland for potentially 2 or 3 meetings over there as well. So it's another one of those days where you need to keep your eyes everywhere, don't you?
And nobody knows what's going to happen.
Exactly, yeah.
It's 18 minutes past 7 and Carol has the weather for us. And Carol, you've said the word snow now. I'm panicking.
Oh, bless you. You're quite right, Steph, though. There is snow in the forecast overnight Friday into Saturday. Today, first of all, though, it's a fairly cloudy day for most of us. Starting off in the east, it's a chilly start where we've had some broken cloud by night, so frosty start for you. But through the course of the day, all this cloud across England and East Wales will be replaced by brighter skies. North East Scotland also seeing some sunshine, but fairly cloudy elsewhere. We have a weak weather front draped over the west of the UK. That's producing some light rain, and also in the west, with exposure in particular, we're looking at very gusty winds touching gale force at times. Now, these are our temperatures, 7 to about 10, maybe 11, so roughly where they should be at this stage in December. Now, through this evening and overnight, under clear skies, there will be more of a frost than we saw the night just gone. We still have the remnants of a weak weather front producing some showery outbreaks of rain, and then we have another one approaching from the west, bringing yet more rain. Temperatures falling to roughly between 1 to maybe about 4, for some just a little bit more under the cloud. Tomorrow then we start off on a chilly note with some frost around. More sunshine tomorrow than we're looking at today. The weather front in the west still bringing in some cloud and rain, but tomorrow is going to be windier across the board than today. So although your thermometer might say 6, 7 or 8, if you're exposed to the wind chill, it will feel much colder than that. It will feel closer to freezing or just above or just below, depending on where you are. As we move from Thursday into Friday, again we start off on a nippy note, variable amounts of cloud, some sunshine, not as windy as it's going to be for most on Thursday. Still windy out towards the west though, and you can see our weather front still with us, still producing some rain. Now these are the maximum temperatures during the afternoon, 4 to 7. So obviously as we head into the evening and overnight, those temperatures are going to drop further. So what's going to happen is, as Steph was alluding to, as this comes in from the west, this weather front, and bumps into the cold air, it's readily going to turn to snow, and not just on the hills. So if we look at that on the pressure chart, here it comes. You can see it's still pretty windy as well in the north and the west. So the snow will come in across parts of southwest England, Wales, Northern Ireland, northwest England, northern England generally, and Scotland. Now we're looking at significant snow with height across Scotland and northern England in particular. But as we go through Saturday, you can see it's a transient feature. It moves away, and then we see some heavier rain coming in. So we've got two issues here. We could have transport problems with all this snow coming across Scotland and also northern England especially. The snow that falls to lower levels across the rest of England, Wales and Northern Ireland will be replaced by some rain, and that rain is going to be heavy enough to potentially have some standing water and localised flooding. So lots going on. Keep in touch with the weather forecast for this weekend. Steph and Dan.
Carol, just wanted to clear up the Christmas party thing. For clarity, you were invited, weren't you? Let's get this straight. But you can't make it because you're working. Is this true?
Well, yes, I'm doing something else. I can't make it. Matt's coming, though. So that's something to look forward to.
Why are you smiling? We're looking forward to seeing Matt. And you do come most years, Carol. It's lovely to see you, but we will miss you this year.
Thank you. I'll see you next Tuesday anyway, so that would be nice too.
Tell you what, though, there'll be more drinks in the bar now.
Disgraceful scenes. Carol, see you later on. It's 22 minutes past 7 now. It's one of the biggest tests of our times. How are we going to pay for the care of our rapidly ageing population? Many of them will be really needing complex and having complex issues and complex needs.
Yeah, so over the next 2 days, we're doing a series called Who Cares?, looking and exploring how other countries have tried to solve the problem and ease the burden on elderly people and their families. So today, Graham Satchell reports from Germany, where everyone pays into an insurance scheme which is set aside just for care needs.
1 and up, 2 and up, 3 and up, 4 and up.
A care home in Berlin, and 91-year-old Suzanne Engelmann is having physiotherapy. Suzanne is here because she had a fall at home and broke her hip.
I was in my bathroom and my knees failed. I just broke down.
Wie geht es Ihnen heute Morgen?
Danke, mir geht es sehr gut.
Frau Engelmann pays for her room and food herself, but her care, 700 euros a month, is financed from a national insurance scheme.
Care is expensive. People cannot afford it themselves. They need these care insurances to finance it.
Like the UK, Germany has an ageing population. The old care system here was means tested and run by local authorities. But in the early 90s, Germany changed the funding. It goes like this.
Everybody pays 2.5% of their salary into a central pot. It's shared. You pay half, your employer pays half. Retired people pay the full amount. Critically, the new system gets rid of means testing. So care is given not on your ability to pay, but solely on your need.
The Pflegeversicherung, or long-term care fund, is centrally run, ring-fenced and largely popular.
I have an old father. He is nearly 80. It's a good life for him. If you pay now, you will have then, if you're old, you will be sure that you will be taken care of.
Everybody cares for anybody. That is okay.
Yes.
Yes.
You're happy with that?
Yeah.
Heike, can you show me some pictures of your husband?
Of course, can I?
Probably the most successful part of the German system, it pays family members to care for their relatives at home. Heike Schmidt used the fund to look after her husband, who'd been diagnosed with cancer.
Everybody who has paid in this fund, he has the right to get money out, to support from the system.
Do you think you would have been able to look after your husband at home if you hadn't had money from the insurance scheme?
It would be very difficult. Very difficult.
There are criticisms of the German system, the most common that the amount each person has to pay keeps going up. It'll rise to 3% of someone's salary, for example, next year. Back at the care home, Frau Engelmann's recovery is going well.
I wanted to learn and to recover.
And you are looking forward to going home?
Yes, I'm trying. I want to go home.
And when she does, Suzanne Engelmann will continue to be supported by the fund. The Germans have been persuaded that to care for their elderly, they all need to pay. Graham Satchell, BBC News, Berlin.
When you hear an individual stories like Frau Engelmann's, it really puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Also, it's fascinating to see how different countries sort of do things which I suppose you always expect we've done it this way, and that's the way it's done. But tomorrow we're going to get another example. Our Tokyo correspondent Rupert Winfield Hayes will be reporting from Japan. They've got the world's oldest population, with more than a quarter of people there over the age of 65. So that's really another sort of case study about how, I suppose, we could try and maybe make some changes to the way we do things in this country.
Yeah, still a lot more to come up on the programme this morning. Time now, though, to get the news, travel and weather where you are.
Good morning from BBC London News. I'm Alice Solfield. A man arrested near an entrance to the Houses of Parliament yesterday has been detained under the Mental Health Act. Police say the 29-year-old was tasered after running towards officers. He's now in hospital and the incident is not being treated as terrorism. A teenager killed in Greenwich over the weekend has been named by police. 18-year-old Aaron Warren died after being stabbed on Saturday evening. A 17-year-old who was arrested has now been released. Children who don't identify as heterosexual are more likely to suffer from depression and self-harm. That's according to a study by University College London, which found the decline in mental health started when children were as young as 10 years old. Researchers say early interventions may be useful to prevent and treat any challenges. The founder of a club dedicated to getting girls in Hackney playing football has been recognised for her work. Katie Huey set up Hackney Laces when she couldn't find a club for girls in her community. She's now helped hundreds both on and off the pitch.
I don't see myself as special. The way that I look at it is, I would hope that people in any community would see that we should be active parts of our community, and if there's something that you could easily fix or play a part of or bring people together, why wouldn't you?
OK, let's take a look at the travel now, starting with the Tube's minor delays on the Bakerloo line currently, but looking good elsewhere. On the roads, this is the northbound traffic on the Blackwall Tunnel southern approach. It's slow from the Woolwich Road flyover. In Finchley, traffic on the North Circular is slow westbound into the A1 at Henley's Corner. On the M25, anti-clockwise traffic remains slow towards junction 28 for the A12. That's following an earlier collision. And Pentonville Road remains closed eastbound from Claremont Square to Islington High Street for gas main work. Now let's get a check on the weather with Kate Kinsella.
Good morning. It's a rather cloudy start this morning, but gradually that cloud will start to break up and we'll see some sunny spells developing. It is, however, going to feel rather chilly. Now, we have a southeasterly breeze on that. We could see one or two spots of light rain and drizzle to start with this morning. Many places not seeing that at all, though those sunny spells developing. The temperature today on the cool side between 6 and 9 Celsius. Now, overnight tonight, still some patchy cloud, but again, that will break up. Some lengthy clear spells, and under the clearer skies the temperature will drop down into low single figures Celsius. We could see a little bit of frost first thing on Thursday morning, the minimum between 1 and 3 Celsius. Now that southeasterly breeze is going to continue to strengthen. It is going to be quite a chilly breeze through Thursday, especially on the thermometer. Temperatures saying around 6 or 7 Celsius, but factor in that southeasterly breeze. It's going to feel much colder through the course of tomorrow. A chilly day for Friday, but less of a breeze, so it perhaps won't feel quite as raw as tomorrow.
I'll be back in half an hour. Now, though, here's Steph and Dan. See you soon.
Hello, this is Breakfast with Dan Walker and Steph McGovern.
Let's bring you a summary of this morning's main stories from BBC News. And a gunman is on the run after killing at least 3 people and wounding many more at a popular Christmas market in Strasbourg.
Police in the French city say they are treating the incident as a terror attack and that the suspect was already deemed a security risk. A number of weapons, including grenades, were found at his home yesterday after a police search. Well, joining us now from the city is Ben Freeman, who was put on lockdown at a local bar for several hours during the incident. Good morning to you, Ben. Thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell us a bit about what happened?
Yeah, I can tell you what I witnessed, which wasn't an awful lot. I'd spent a day wandering around the Christmas markets with my parents who were visiting me here, and we wandered back to this bar at around 7:30 through the main city centre, and then at about 8 o'clock I got a message from a friend saying that something had happened and that to be careful. And then about 2 minutes after that, the bar manager shouted that she was locking the bar down, that the front door was going to be closed. And then 10 minutes later, she said that we all had to move upstairs. And then they closed off all the lights, and there was about probably 60, 70 of us all cooped up upstairs in this bar. And that lasted until about 11 o'clock last night.
Gosh, that must have been really scary. How did you feel? And did you get much information from anybody, from the police or anybody?
The bar manager was in, she told us she was in contact with the police, and it was the police who told her to get everyone upstairs and to make sure that the doors were locked and things like that, and that nobody could leave. So she was giving us updates as and when she got them, but as you can imagine, it was a little chaotic.
Yeah.
But we didn't really know what was happening outside beyond what we could read.
Yeah.
On Twitter and on
and then when you did leave, what was it like then?
Luckily, we'd come back to a bar that was only probably about 100 metres from where I live. So it was a sort of happy accident, really, that we only had to walk around this corner and we were all back at home straight away.
Yeah,
but there were quite a few people around that had been let out from bars at that time. So everyone was sort of, I mean, there's clearly tense, but there were enough people around to make you think that the police had deemed it safe enough to leave.
I bet you were relieved when you got back to your home. Ben, thank you so much for talking to us on Breakfast. We really appreciate that. That's Ben Freeman there, who was involved in that attack on Strasbourg last night in a lockdown in a local bar.
Really interesting to hear those eyewitness reports, isn't it? At 7:33, let's bring you some other news around this morning. Speculation that Theresa May is on the brink of a leadership challenge as anger grows over her handling of Brexit negotiations. Senior Conservative MPs have told the BBC that the chairman of the party's 1922 committee has now received the 48 letters needed from backbenchers to trigger a vote. Well, early on we spoke to the Justice Secretary, David Gauke, who told us he wouldn't be surprised if that threshold had been reached, but that he would be disappointed.
She's not going to be able to succeed if, rather than going out there negotiating with her counterparts, she's having to deal with a confidence vote here. We'll see whether that happens or not, but I think that is unwelcome, and I think it would be seen by the public as being self-indulgent, especially if this we actually had a leadership election. I think at this point in our history, given the circumstances that we're in, the challenges that the government faces, I really don't think that is a responsible course of action.
Now that's David Gaunt. We'll be speaking to Ian Duncan-Smith later as well. And just to let you know, Owen Paterson, the former minister, has been speaking on Radio 4 this morning, and he was asked about the letter that he had sent in to Sir Graham Brady, and he said he has handed it to Sir Graham Brady, and it appears, he says, that it didn't send the number over the 48 required, because his view was that if that had happened, then Sir Graham Brady would have announced that news straight away. So we'll try and get across that for you, and if they are anywhere near that threshold, officially it's somewhere in the sort of high 20s, but we don't know exactly the number, and Owen Paterson's been speaking about that this morning on the BBC.
Yeah, it's a story that's very much developing. At 7:35, the body of British backpacker Grace Mullane has been formally identified and returned to her family, who say that their world has been turned upside down. The 22-year-old went missing from a hostel in Auckland on December the 1st. Detectives in New Zealand say they're still piecing together exactly what happened to her and are building a timeline of events. A 26-year-old man was charged earlier this week with her murder and will appear in court again next month.
Debt charities are warning that some of the poorest families in the country will be left relying on food banks over Christmas because of universal credit. Well, from today, all new benefit claimants will be signed up to the scheme. Many people already on universal credit have complained about their payments being reduced and delayed. The government says there's no reason for people to be without money over Christmas because advanced payments are available.
That brings you up to date with the news, and a great-grandmother in Australia is thought to have become the world's oldest skydiver.
No way. 102?
Yeah, 102? Irene O'Shea, have a look at this. What a legend.
Go on, lass.
Who first jumped out of the plane to mark her 100th birthday. She then completed a 14,000-foot tandem dive to raise money for charity. She doesn't even look scared.
Pretty impressive, that.
That is brilliant. Actually, it doesn't even look like it remotely bothered her.
No, just a normal day's activity. Tremendous fleece. There's one thing in the papers I wanted to pick up as well. Have you seen there's been some research done by a university in New Zealand, and they say that James Bond has got a drink problem. I mean, I don't know whether this is tongue-in-cheek or not, but they've looked at all the drinks that he's had over the years. So 24 films spanning 1962 to 2015. They say he's seen drinking 109 times in those films. And the genuine conclusion of this university report is MI6 should be a more responsible employer by referring James Bond to work-funded counselling or psychiatric support services. They also say that M should no longer offer Bond drinks in workplace settings. That's someone's actual university job, that, to come up with that.
So shaken but not slurred.
Oh.
Oh.
Nice. If I haven't got anything to give you, but well done. Carol's got the weather in about 10 minutes or so for us, and Sal's here after a really dramatic night in the Champions League. Sal.
It was dramatic, and this morning we're talking a lot about Mo Salah's goal, because of course that was hugely significant, but what about that save at the end? Alisson's save at the end.
When you really need it, that's why you pay, what was it, 65 million quid?
65, and Klopp said afterwards he would have paid double for him. And also, because he hadn't actually been that bothered for most of the game, had he? He hadn't been troubled at all. To have that level of concentration and still be on it right at the end is really something. So Liverpool and Spurs both made it through to the last 16 of the Champions League, and who other than Salah would score the goal that would send last year's finalists through to secure second place in their group. Joe Linsky has more.
Jubilation in the Champions League comes with a test of the heart race, but Liverpool and Spurs have both found a way to keep their European beat. It would always feel daunting for Tottenham in the Nou Camp, even with Lionel Messi left on Barcelona's bench. When this team rest their greatest, though, new superstars just step forward. This is 21-year-old Ousmane Dembele running rings round Spurs' optimism. A goal that punctured their plan, but not Spurs' belief. Soon the urgency to convert those chances increased with news from Italy. The North London mission was to match or better the result of Inter Milan. So when they equalised against PSV, Spurs now had to score. It was an extra layer of tension that would, finally, bring out their clinical streak.
And there's the goal they were looking for! Tottenham Hotspur!
Finish from Lucas Moura that sends Spurs through to the knockouts. After 3 Champions League games, they had just a single point. This was a night and a campaign where they turned it around. The Anfield patchwork knew Liverpool's hopes were on a thread. They had to beat Napoli 1-0 or by 2 clear goals. Luckily, Mo Salah makes everything look simple. Their route through to the knockouts came through the legs of David Ospina, but Liverpool's own keeper made an equally important intervention. With this point-blank save, Alisson stopped last-minute heartbreak. This was not the vintage way Liverpool usually do European nights, but one at least some supporters won't forget. Joe Linsky, BBC News.
So great news for both Liverpool and Spurs. They will be in Monday's last 16 draw. Let's hear now from the Liverpool boss, Jurgen Klopp.
I'm still full of adrenaline. I could feel it in bottles again. So this game was just amazing. It was outstanding, unbelievable. The boys played their whole heart on the pitch. I'm not sure if the right saying, but it's just that they were, with each part of their body, they were in that game.
That's just about it from me for now, for a very special reason.
Yes, because we've been talking all morning about a potential vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister Theresa May. What we were saying to you earlier is that there's a threshold of 48 letters which Sir Graham Brady, who's the leader of the 1922 committee, needs to get to. Once he gets to that percentage of Conservative MPs, that then automatically triggers a vote of no confidence in Theresa May. And we understand in the last few minutes it's been confirmed that that threshold has in fact been reached. So let's go straight to Downing Street. Our political correspondent Ian Watson is there. Ian, I know this is all happening in the last sort of 60 seconds or so. What more can you tell us?
Well, this has been confirmed. There will be a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister this evening. That has been confirmed by the only source that knows these things. 48 letters have been reached. There will be the first phase in a leadership challenge against the Prime Minister tonight. Now, just a few minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, out of that door came the Chief Whip. Obviously, having seen the Prime Minister this morning, he left in a car very quickly, didn't say anything at all, but clearly that news has now got through. The Prime Minister has been told, as far as I'm aware, and she will now face this challenge. Now, we have to be absolutely clear about this straight away, that when this happens, there is a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister amongst all of the MPs. It takes 48 to trigger it, but it takes 158 MPs to vote for no confidence in the Prime Minister, half of the parliamentary party, before she is ousted. If she wins this vote tonight, she will be safe in her job here at Number 10 for another year. If she loses, then we're into a Conservative leadership contest.
So what happens next, Ian?
Well, what will happen is that if she loses this vote, then she will have to step aside as Prime Minister once a leadership contest is arranged. The field's then open for other candidates to join. We know that a whole plethora of MPs are interested in the job. What will then happen is they go through a series of hustings, of meetings, putting out their case to their fellow MPs. The fellow MPs would then whittle this down to the final two. Once they've reached the final two, the membership as a whole then get to decide who the next Conservative leader is, but of course they're also deciding who the next Prime Minister is. Now, we should bear in mind that Downing Street are saying today to Conservative MPs that if there is a leadership contest, this will undermine the Prime Minister in the negotiations with the European Union, but also because there's no one clear candidate, one clear successor, the whole process may have to be undertaken, and if that's the case, it may not be completed until mid-January or late January. Now remember, we're meant to be leaving the European Union on March the 29th, so what they're saying is that that would increase the risk of no deal or no Brexit. So as far as we're concerned, it looks as though she's prepared to fight on, but to warn them that they risk Brexit itself if they try to oust her.
Ian, just to clarify as well, because you were telling us earlier what a busy day ahead the Prime Minister has, how does this now affect things in terms of Prime Minister's questions, in terms of the trips to Ireland and the potential meetings she was due to have there? What happens with regards to those now?
Well, this is obviously breaking news that has been confirmed that 48 Conservative MPs have sent in letters of no confidence in the Prime Minister, and that confidence vote will be taking place this evening. Now, I imagine, but I don't know, that may well undermine her ability to travel to Ireland and talk to the Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar. It means, though, that she can't duck Prime Minister's questions. She is the Prime Minister, and she's going to have to take on a very potentially hostile House of Commons, because Jeremy Corbyn will be on the other side criticising her, but she'll also have people behind her on her own side, allegedly, who've been denouncing her and who want her removed from office.
Ian, thank you very much for that this morning. So that's the breaking news we can bring you on BBC Breakfast this morning, that a Tory leadership contest has been triggered, Steph, this morning.
Yes, enough MPs have now sent letters to trigger that, so there will now be a vote of confidence, so there will be a secret ballot that happens. As Ian was saying there, that ballot would need 158 votes against Theresa May in order to take the leadership from her. If she wins, she will of course stay as leader and then can't be challenged again for a year. If she doesn't win, then there will be other leaders, potential leaders, put forward, and Theresa May will not be able to stand in that vote for that.
And Ian was saying all this on a day where there's Prime Minister's questions, and Theresa May was due to be going to Ireland for a series of meetings over there to try and talk about potentially renegotiating the backstop arrangement with the EU. So we'll try and bring you the latest on it as we get it. As Ian was saying, this is literally broken in the last sort of 4 or 5 minutes or so, and it's unsure yet exactly what the Prime Minister's schedule will look like for the rest of today. We'll try and clarify that for you, and we'll try and speak to a few more guests a little bit later on as well. I know we're speaking to Ian Duncan-Smith, who's scheduled to speak to us just after 8 o'clock this morning. But that is our breaking news on Breakfast for you today, that there will be a leadership... there have been enough letters sent to Sir Graham Brady, 48 letters, to trigger a leadership contest in the Conservative Party.
Yeah. At 7:45 now, convicted paedophile Russell Bishop was yesterday finally jailed for life for the 2 murders of 2 schoolgirls 32 years ago.
So-called Babes in the Wood killer was served, who will serve a minimum of 36 years after being found guilty at a second trial on Monday. Bishop was aged 20 in 1986, killed 9-year-olds Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway in a woodland den in Brighton. Well, Detective Superintendent Jeff Riley, the detective who took over investigating that case 5 years ago, joins us now from our Brighton studio. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about this morning. I'll ask you about your own sort of personal views and those of the police in a moment, but what was it like for you and for those who've been investigating this case for such a long time to see that reaction from the families yesterday?
It's been a truly fascinating case. You know, this is a case that's been ongoing for 32 years. We've been kind of over the years, we've done reviews. In 2012, we got a significant forensic breakthrough. We then set up this new investigation. I met with the families back in 2013 and I said to them, look, you know, we've got something here, I think it's positive, but you need to be patient. They have been patient, and it was just wonderful to be at court yesterday and to see their reaction when Bishop was finally sentenced.
And in terms of the police case against him, just give us an idea of how long that's been going on for and the sort of the steps along the way, I suppose, to getting now to the case where he's going to face life in jail.
Well, obviously the 1986 investigation ended at trial when he was found not guilty in 1987. Obviously the law back then didn't allow us to consider any kind of form of retrial. The law changed in effect in 2005 when double jeopardy was brought in. We conducted a review in 2006 and we thought we had a little bit more evidence. We obviously had the 1990 offence that he committed at that stage, but it just wasn't enough to take it back to the Court of Appeal. Under double jeopardy you have to have new evidence that's compelling and reliable, and we just didn't feel we had it at that stage. There's been massive advances in DNA, particularly over the last 3 or 4 years. And as of that result in 2012, where we did the review, we then had a positive forensic link with Bishop and that sweatshirt. That sweatshirt was key in the original investigation. It remained key in this one. And that then just gave us that springboard to then start the re-investigation, take the matter to the DPP. We then got an agreement to go to the Court of Appeal, and we find ourselves now with him rightly convicted for these dreadful crimes.
And there's a sort of an added element to this as well. Bishop, as part of his defence, he actually accused Barry Fellows, who was Nicola's father. So, you know, the family, and he in particular, Barry Fellows, has had to deal with that for so many years.
Yes, you know, Barry gave evidence. He was cross-examined on this at court, and anybody who saw that cross-examination kind of failed to be moved by Barry's reaction. But, you know, he was strong, he was determined, he was dignified, and he answered questions. You know, Russell Bishop, under his cross-examination, lasted about an hour and a half, and then he asked for a break and refused to come back into the witness box. So that just about sums up the character of Russell Bishop, I think.
Jeff Riley, thank you very much for talking to us this morning. That's Jeff from Sussex Police joining us on BBC Breakfast. Well, we've got some breaking news for you this morning.
Yes, the UK Prime Minister will face a vote of no confidence in her leadership. That vote will take place until this evening. There'll be a secret ballot where obviously her leadership is then in question. If she wins that ballot, then she will stay as leader and that can't be challenged for another year. However, if she loses that, then the party will be looking for a new leader.
Yeah, and it does come down essentially to can she get the support of her party. So if she doesn't get over 50% of the vote tonight, then